So good afternoon, everyone. It's always tough to speak after everyone had lunch. So I hope you had some good coffee and are energetic. The next talk after me is about beer, so stay tuned. My name is Elad Schaffer. I'm co-founder of Wikistrat, the world's first crowdsourced consultancy. I was asked to talk about the future of crowdsourcing, and as you can imagine, this is a rather broad and complex question to try to tackle, but I will try to share with you some of our thoughts at Wikistrat as to where crowdsourcing as a method, as an industry, is heading. Wikistrat has been an evangelist for crowdsourcing for some time. Over the last 6 years, we've conducted hundreds of crowdsourced exercises where we brought together thousands of subject matter experts to collaborate in real time in trying to solve complex problems for our clients. We would usually have a team of anywhere between 50 to 500 subject matter experts, and they would be collaborating virtually in the exploration of scenarios for how an industry might look like 20 years from now, or a strategy for how to enter a certain market, or criticizing a certain concept presented by our clients. And our clients are quite demanding. We're looking at NATO, the US Department of Defense, Deloitte, some of the largest banks in the world, and Fortune 500 companies. We recently invested some time and thought into thinking about the future of crowdsourcing, and we summarize some of those thoughts for you today. Crowdsourcing is often associated with the ability to get a question answered more accurately. We ask a large crowd a question, such as how many candies are in this jar, and hopefully the answer will be more accurate than if we asked an individual or a small group. But some questions or problems may not lend themselves to a single answer. In fact, most real-world problems have a complex set of potential answers, a range of alternatives that one needs to consider. And we argue that these such questions are best tackled through crowdsourcing. It's those non-discrete questions like what strategy should my company take or where is this industry going that are best suited for crowds. And why so? Crowdsourcing is often associated with competition. We leverage competition between the participants in a crowd to generate a wider spectrum of ideas, perspectives, and scenarios. It also helps spur innovation. But we also encourage collaboration within the crowd in order to refine the ideas and expand upon them. Crowdsourcing enables us to tap into a diversity of perspectives. Each individual is able to bring their own backgrounds, experience, age, location into the play. And crowdsourcing is often quick and cost-efficient. So that has enabled us to take some of the world's best experts and innovative thinkers and do some incredibly complex things, such as looking at NATO and how it might need to operate in 2030, or preparing strategies for some of the largest banks in the world as to how they should deal with new technologies, such as the Internet of Things or blockchain. But you will say, and rightfully so, that this is already old news. Crowdsourcing is already and increasingly being adopted by governments, private sector, and NGOs. Whether your crowd is the general public, your own employees, or an external set of experts, the benefits of crowdsourcing are already widely recognized. So the real question then becomes, what's next? I'm narrowing the question to the future of crowdsourced analysis, ideation, and problem solving, although some of the concepts that I will present can also be applied beyond to other types of crowdsourcing. We see the future of crowdsourcing as influenced by three main vectors. The first one is the crowd, and where we argue for an empowered crowd. A crowd that is smarter, using big data software and discourse analysis to make it better and empowered. The second is the need. What are the clients' actual needs? And clients are increasingly expecting crowdsourcing companies to support the full suite of analytical needs, from strategy all the way through implementation. And the third is the organization, where we look at how do we better integrate crowdsourced solutions with the corporation. And there we call for a crowdsourcing unit within large organizations to serve as an organizational linchpin. We start with the first vector, empowering the crowd. Most users of crowdsourcing these days use the crowd as is, meaning we ask the crowd a question and we expect it to answer using their own existing knowledge and skills. But what if we invested in the crowd? What if we empowered it with the right information and knowledge to do better? We believe that can be a force multiplier. What does empowering the crowd look like? Well, first, give them access to unique information sets. Ideally, things they don't currently know or have access to because it's either difficult to obtain or expensive. Then equip them with research and analysis tools. Ideally, software that is both easy to use, but powerful enough that the crowd can make good use out of it. Such software should include big data tools, sentiment analysis, social media filtering. The idea here is that we want the crowd to be able to do more with the data. We want them to turn big data into big knowledge. And thirdly, we want to make all that tools and information accessible through a user-friendly mechanism, ideally through dashboards and mobile applications. The key value that we see here for the user or the client is that an empowered crowd is a smarter crowd, and that yields super empowered outputs. Another aspect of the crowd is the composition, and that was discussed earlier by Synthetron. I encountered outside the wonderful presentation by Wave, truly impressive, but they had defined crowdsourcing as a strategy for getting the largest possible number of people to contribute, and I beg to differ. When crowdsourcing analysis for complex problems, it's not just about the size of the crowd. In fact, in some cases, you might choose to have a smaller group of experts to collaborate on a problem, and they will perform better. Our argument is that we should also be looking at who in the crowd is contributing and why are they saying what they're saying. The reason is that analysis is subjective. Each member of the crowd has their own opinions and background, based on their background and age groups, geographies, and disciplines that they've established over the years. And we argue that we should look beyond just what the crowd is saying, but also look at the who and why. Take a look at the issue of the Zika virus and how it might expand. An American perspective will be very, very different to a West African one. The perspective of a biology researcher will be very different to one of a healthcare professional. And the ideas brought together by a professor will be different to one of a young entrepreneur. All of these perspectives are important, sometimes critical for the success of an exercise. We want the fusion of all these ideas to help us come across the more innovative solutions. However, being able to discern who has contributed what helps us assign, for some purposes, a different weight to each idea. In other cases, we might want to compare and contrast the opinions of different group types. So the real news here is the introduction of discourse analysis tools for crowdsourcing managers, and that should help us as crowdsourcing companies answer some really interesting questions, such as how do answers in the group differ based on the location or age? That should add another layer of insights to whatever we produce at the end of such an analytical exercise. It should also help us understand who in the crowd work best together, which are the most effective teams that we can create to tackle specific individual problems. Who are the connectors, the content generators, the disruptors that should help us in managing and optimizing the assembly of the crowd. The second vector is the demand or the client's need. Here we argue that crowdsourcing companies will need to broaden their suite of services to meet more and more client requests. Today, most crowdsourcing companies still provide a rather narrow solution to problems. It can be tactical. I can create an app using Topcoder, or I can create a logo using 99 Design, or it can be strategic. I might look for the scenarios for the future of my industry, or plan strategies for how to deal with a certain challenge with Wikistrat or 10x. But clients often need answers that go beyond that. They need different or multiple layers of answers to the same problem. For example, we had one government client who asked us to look and map the top 100 indicators for risk and instability in an African country. And we've assembled a group of some of the world's best African experts on the matter, and we established, here are the top 100 indicators for instability. But then the client came to us and said, okay, now that we've established this list, we want you to monitor it. We want you to help us with the crowd see how these risk factors are changing over time. And we've done that. And then we had a large bank come to us and say, hey, please assess the future of the industry. How will blockchain impact us? We've done that. And then they asked us, okay, so now help us select the right blockchain company for acquisition. So as you can see, clients are increasingly demanding a wider array of solutions. And they expect crowdsourcing companies to do more. And we believe that this will lead to two phenomena. One, indeed, crowdsourcing companies will need to broaden their suite of services to support needs from the strategic level and all the way through implementation. We've seen that happening with traditional consulting, and we believe the same will apply in crowdsourcing. And we will also see industry consolidation, meaning narrow solutions by companies will merge into larger crowdsourcing and other providers of such services. The third vector deals with the strategic integration of crowdsourcing within the organization. As we mentioned, crowdsourcing is becoming a critical function in organizations. It now supports a range of needs from decision-making through strategic planning and execution. But the problem is that crowdsourcing platforms and companies, due to their virtual nature, usually don't have the same level of intimate knowledge of their clients. And this can result in crowdsourcing processes that don't fully match the needs of the actual client. So how do we bridge this inherent gap between the crowd and the client? Well, most companies choose to appoint a person who will liaise with the crowd or with the crowdsourcing company and represent the company's interests. And we believe this is not enough. Crowdsourcing has become a profession. It requires a deep understanding of technology, analytical methodologies, of how to manage a crowd and how to incentivize it. And therefore, we believe that large companies will need to build a crowdsourcing unit or function within it to facilitate the crowdsourcing activities of the organization. Such a function will use to know and tailor the right crowdsourced solution for the corporate needs. They will be able to select the specific vendor, platform, and method for use within their organization. They will also be promoting and embedding the use of crowdsourcing solutions within these organizations. Some good example for that is Deloitte. Deloitte, one of the largest professional services firms in the world, has recently this year launched Deloitte Pixel. Deloitte Pixel is a global unit within Deloitte designed to create an ecosystem of crowdsourcing vendors and companies who will be able to support Deloitte and its clients. So they serve as this organizational linchpin for all things crowdsourcing. To conclude, over a decade since the term was coined, crowdsourcing is mature. I think that's safe to say. It's no longer need to be justified. It is a valid, useful, and efficient method. But like any other industry, it must stay relevant and ahead of the curve. In this short talk, we discussed some core themes that we believe will help crowdsourcing stay relevant. It is about empowering the crowd with big data capabilities, with discourse analysis, and with the right information sets. It's about supporting the client's full suite of needs, from strategy and all the way through implementation. And it is about working effectively with these clients and their crowdsourcing unit. This will shape, as we believe, the future of crowdsourcing. Crowdsourcing is all about innovation, as we know, and every industry must reinvent itself to stay relevant. We believe that crowdsourcing needs to do that too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elad. Let's open a question or two. Anyone has a question for Elad? Anyone?
Just here.
Right there.
Yeah, you mentioned that it cannot be enough to know your clients, to work with representational organizations. And I totally agree with that, but I would like to have some good... I would like to be able to put it to words to be able to convince people in my organization, because I experience that it's difficult to convince them, because we have a history of working together with representational bodies, and they feel that if we would go directly to our clients, those representational bodies will feel like we kind of, in Dutch, we bypass them. So I need some strong arguments to convince them. Yeah.
Do you need arguments to convince them of the value of crowdsourcing, or why?
Directly to the clients.
Sure. I think that organizations need to recognize where their strengths are best located. And in many cases, traditional organizations are not best suited to do crowdsourcing themselves. And the idea would be to find a way to integrate crowdsourcing within what you do and then supply it to your clients. And oftentimes through our work with Deloitte Pixel, the example that I just mentioned, Wikisha does not do the full work to Deloitte's clients. Rather, we tailor a solution that takes both what our partners do and utilizes it with crowdsourcing and take it to the client. So, for example, we might specialize in finding the best experts in technology and bring them into a project, but then our partner at Deloitte might create a workshop in-house, not virtually like we're used to, and together that creates a more holistic solution to Deloitte's clients in this case.
Okay, we've got
Okay.
one more question over there, maybe, if we've got
More?
time.
Right there.
Afternoon. I have a very nice question about future. All time, when we start our project, we listen one question from the all investors: safety, security, and guarantee. What you meant about these main questions in future of crowdsourcing?
So just so I get the question straight, you're asking about the usefulness of security in crowdsourcing simulations?
Safety, security, guarantee, it's for the money return of the investors.
Safety of the information?
No, only for the money.
Safety of the money. Well,
Yes.
I think that applies more to crowdfunding, which is not exactly what we do. We're not dealing with transactions, but rather with the analysis of such transactions. And therefore, in our case, and I was intentionally trying to narrow this presentation to crowdsourcing of analysis and ideation, I think it applies less so. But surely there's plenty of crowdfunding experts in the crowd who will be able to better answer your question.
Good.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Elad.
Thank you, Elad.
Thank you very much.